A lot of you know who Ann Howald is. You know her reputation and expertise. She taught at the JC and other places. She's started out wanting to be a writer as a kid, and it morphed into more things, and eventually botany as a specialty. She attended UC Santa Barbara for her bachelor's as well as her master's. And rather than go on and on, she's traveled all over California and other parts of the country as a consulting biologist. She knows her stuff, and we're delighted to have her back. She's also going to be leading some field trips, and she'll mention those later. But Anne, anything else you want me to say?
No, that's fine. I thought I would mention the field trips first,
Oh, okay.
if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just, then everybody can like leave if you need to. So yeah, there are 2 field trips coming up in April, and before when we were having dinner, I was saying, oh my goodness, I forgot the dates. So you can look those up on our website. I apologize, but one is about mid-April, and that one is to Alara, a private preserve up in the Miacamas. I'm assuming maybe some people have already signed up for this. I think Lynn Hauser, our field trip chair, is limiting that to members because we can only have 30 people. So you'll get the details about how we're going to get there if you sign up for the field trip. Does everybody know about this? No? You don't? Okay, sorry. And then there's going to be another field trip that I'm leading at the end of April, and that one is going to be to Salt Point State Park, and it's going to be to the headlands. I was going to go from the Stump Beach parking lot, but those trails down and up are too eroded. So we're going to be meeting at the lower parking lot at Bristlecone. So you need to go in through the Bristol campground, pay a fee. It's $10 or $9 if you're a senior. And then we're meeting there. The details will be in the newsletter and online. And it'll be, 4 hours or something. Lots of beautiful bluff wildflowers and pretty easy walking. I'm planning to do like a loop of about maybe as much as 2 miles, but not, much elevation gain. So that's what's coming up in April. So I guess if you guys want to move up some, I don't know if, that would help. I'm really sorry about the problems that we're having, but I guess that's, what we can do. This says discovering Mono County plants. And so that's where we're going to be. What was that?
Our way.
Oh, I'm in your way. Okay, well, I have to be able to touch the computer in order to make this go. So can I move the computer?
Not too far.
Not too far. Okay. How's that? Am I out of your way now? Okay. Anyway, it is a very desert land over there. And so some people say, well, do you really have any wildflowers over in Mono County? And so I guess I'm going to be showing you some of the things that we have in Mono County. And just make sure I hit the right button.
Let's see if the arrows are going to do it. They may not. So we might have to click
Just
on
do
each.
this.
You're going to have to use the trackpad and
This.
click on each one individually.
Oh.
Yeah, as we
So
go.
you mean
Or
like-
I can, you know what? I'll sit up here and I can just run the slides.
Okay. Well, another thing that didn't happen because of our problems here is that the labels on this map are not showing up. But this is a map of Mono County. Here's where it's located in California. It's the small county of the Eastern Sierra. The big county is Inyo County, right there. That's where Death Valley is, and a lot of things that people are familiar with. But Mono County does have, many areas of interest. And of course, you can't read any of these labels here. But we're going to be going on a field trip through parts of Mono County. There's other places I could have chosen. There's just, many, many interesting spots to visit. We're going to start here in the volcanic tableland. This is oh, okay. Did I do that?
I
Or
did
you
that.
do that?
Yeah, I'm highlighting it for the people.
Volcanic tableland is a plateau of volcanic material that blew out of this caldera when it exploded 750,000 years ago. So it's all kind of this beautiful pinkish brown tuff material called the Bishop Tuff on the volcanic tableland. Then we're heading up towards the White Mountains. These are the White Mountains right here. And we're going to go up and visit the bristlecone pines. So we're kind of doing a transect across the southern part of Mono County. Then once we've spent a little time in the White Mountains, we're going to go down to Fish Lake Valley. This is a part of, frankly, California that most people have never heard of. It is very deserty and right next to Nevada, of course, but it's got some really interesting things down there. Then we're going to scoot up to the Mono Basin, and there's lots of things that I could have talked about in the Mono Basin, but we're going all the way out here to the very eastern edge where there's some unusual, again, rock types, and we'll look at the very rare plants that are found in that part of the world. Then up to the Bodie Hills right here. That's what that sign says, Bodie Hills. Spend a little time there and then come back and do another alpine visit up to, let me get in the right place, right there, the Dana Plateau. So another alpine spot. But before we start on our field trip, I just want to show you some of the things that have been found in Mono County over the last few years. The project that I got interested in when I retired was documenting what are the plants that are in Mono County, and of course, what are the plants that are not in Mono County, since there are a lot of things that are misidentified. And just going to places that people have never been before over the past 10 or 11 years, and you know, connecting with friends of mine that also have botanized in this area. We've found a lot of really interesting things. So next slide. So this is a new species for Mono County. So not a new species to science, but this is the world's smallest lupin. That's the entire plant. It's called lilliput lupin or inch-high lupin. The plants are about 2 inches across and about 1 inch high. And a friend of mine, Tim Messick, and I found this. We were invited to botanize a new preserve of the Wildlands Conservancy. And you may have heard of that because those are the people who make it possible for us to visit the Jenner Headlands. And they have preserves all over California. And this is one of their new ones in the western Bodie Hills. And Tim and I were both botanists. They said, well, we don't have a plant list or know anything, you know, about what's here. And so we're out walking on the slopes with these folks, and both Tim and I look down at the ground and go, oh, you know, look at that. So this little lupin had only been collected one other time in the entire state of California, and that was up in the Mono Plateau area. So it had already been listed actually as a CNPS rare plant, but now it's known from Mono County. This is the habitat that it occurs in. It's sort of a pinyon juniper woodland with an understory of sagebrush and lots of other rare plants there. I'm hoping that the Wildlands Conservancy will make that preserve more open to the public than it is now, because it's not very big, but it's a really interesting place to visit. Okay, next slide. Oh, well, you can't. Oh, let's see. Go back one maybe, or no, is this the next one?
This is the
I
next
see.
one.
So
yes.
none of the writing shows up. Okay.
Here, let me see if I can change. I don't know if I
Yeah,
can change anything. or
it
else
should
it's
be all
gonna
in
crap.
white. So everything that was in white is now in black.
Right.
That's okay.
If I can highlight it,
So I'm just, there you go.
that's the title.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, sorry about this, folks, but you know, the point here is this is a herbarium specimen from 1929. So this species of Callanthus or jewel flower had not been seen or collected in Mono County since this specimen that was collected in 1929. Well, now we have, you know, lots of people who are interested in iNaturalist. I think a lot of you know what that is, where you take photographs with your phone and you post these things. And a couple that spends a lot of their lives, Chloe and Trevor Van Loon, they were out, you know, botanizing, and they took a picture of this plant. And after much discussion online through iNaturalist, we figured out that this is, you know, the same species of Callanthus that was last collected in 1929. Can you, yeah, Callanthus major variety nevadensis. This isn't their photograph, but it is a photograph showing, you know, what the plant looks like. And all of this other detail, this is like the iNaturalist post. Okay. All righty. So this is a new species that I found in, and it is a new species to science that I found in 2019 when I was, you know, crawling on my hands and knees the way botanists like to do on some moss beds up on Sonora Pass. And I found this little monkey flower. You know, we don't have Mimulus anymore. If you're into scientific names, they've divvied up Mimulus into 5 different genera, and now a lot of them are in the genus Erythranthe. Say that 3 times, Erythranthe. Anyway, so I knew that I hadn't seen this plant before, but I thought, well, you know, it's maybe just something found in other parts of California. But I couldn't key it out. All of the different keys that I used, you know, I couldn't come up with an answer as to what this was. So what do you do in a case like that if you're a botanist? Well, you make a good specimen and then you send that specimen off to the person who is the expert in that group. I'm not an expert in anything. I'm just a field botanist who goes out there and looks for things. So I sent the specimen to Guy Neeson, and he is one of just a couple of experts on the monkey flowers for the entire United States. And within a very, very short time, I collected this in July, and the next January, and this is his job, he had published a paper naming this as a new species. I had no idea he was going to name it after me. I've never met the man. But apparently he looked me up online, and this is really interesting to CNPS members, but he said, I'm dedicating this to Ann Howald for her many years of volunteer activity with the California Native Plant Society and other entities. So these beautiful, yes? Oh, the volume down. Maybe I will just talk.
We're not
about it.
supposed to touch the
So
controls
maybe
back.
I have a very loud voice, so how about if I talk a little bit softer? Is that okay? Yes? No?
We could also we could also take the mic off if you're willing to project
No.
the okay.
No?
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Very good.
Just try to.
Select that one.
Although
I have teacher voice, so.
Anne, I would also ask if you could speak towards the laptop as well, because the people on Zoom are hearing you through this. They're getting residual from the speakers, but
Okay. Speak
as
towards
much as
the
you
left.
can. I know these are a lot at once. I'm sorry. You're doing great.
Well, anyway, I just wanted to mention the theme. So my friend Steve Matson, professional level photographer who took these photographs, he managed to get a photo of this bee, which is about 3 millimeters long. And I thought, well, this has got to be the pollinator. I sent the photo to many bee experts, and they were able to tell me that it's in the genus Osmia, but they said there's not enough detail here to be able to say what the species is. But one thing we can tell you is that's not the pollinator, because that is a male bee, and male bees do not pollinate. They lack the hairs on the abdomen that the females have, and so that guy is just after nectar. Okay, next.
How tiny is that?
Oh, the whole plant is about 4 inches tall and the flowers are maybe half an inch. Yeah, very tiny little plant crawling around, on the ground. Many other famous botanists had been to that exact spot. And there are 4 other species of monkey flowers right in that same area. And I think they just, they weren't crawling, they were standing. And they said, well, that must be the same as that. But it wasn't. So the following year, Steve Matson, my photographer friend, and we published a second paper. And this was about the habitat of this plant. There's only right now today, I only know of 9 locations for this plant. It only grows on these thick moss beds. So think of a felt carpet that's, 3/4 of an inch thick. And this is the plant right there, growing out of these moss beds. The moss beds are on granite slabs, not just any old granite slab, but a granite slab that has a seep or a source of water that, flows constantly, at least until July when this plant flowers. So it's a very unique habitat for this species. The moss itself, Imbribrium alpinum, alpine bryum moss, the moss is rare. So not only is the plant rare, but the moss that it grows in is rare. Okay, next. Okay, so do you think this looks like this? This plant, does that look like that plant? Well, they used to be lumped together in the same species, Calanthus pilosus. And there was a researcher, a guy who did his PhD at Berkeley, who recognized that this plant is actually not the same as this plant. Calanthus pilosus is known from all across the Great Basin, Nevada, even into Utah. But this plant, which is commonly called chocolate drops, is only on the east side of the Sierra within a relatively limited amount of the east side of the Sierra. Well, the person who recognized this, Roy Buck, had fully intended to write this up as a new species, but he died unexpectedly. And so a group of us, we called ourselves the Roy Buck Group, we decided that we would get this published in his honor. So it's taken a while. It's taken a lot of herbarium work to locate just some important specimens that support his work. But if you could see this right here, you would see that hopefully this plant is going to be published as a new species in this year, in 2025. So we will have Calanthus sierrae will be the scientific name of this one, common name chocolate drops, and then this is the pilosus, which they both were called for, quite some time. So new species, hopefully 2025. New species to science. Okay, next. Okay, so in my work that I'm doing, trying to figure out what is in Mono County and what isn't in Mono County, which is all going to go into a book eventually, one of the things that I'm trying to identify is which species in Mono County, while they might not be recognized by CNPS, they might not be globally rare. They might be globally common, but they are locally rare in Mono County. And a lot of other floras that have been done, counties in the Bay Area have had that that designation. People have done a flora and they've identified plants that are locally rare. So I just threw this in here because this is an example of one of those locally rare plants. Not rare in California or in the world, but there's only 2 locations for this in Mono County. One in the Owens River Gorge, which is just a big eroded gorge in the volcanic tableland. Lots of interesting plants down there and a creek in the bottom, and also in Rock Creek Canyon. So very large flowers, very bright, showy plant. You wouldn't have missed this if you were a botanist So I feel fairly confident that it's really only known from those two places. Okay, next. Oh, dear. That should be much, much smaller. Well, okay. What this was supposed to be was just
Dismal.
showing you what the entries in the book that I'm writing are going to look like. So it's a checklist. So for each entry, there's going to be a discussion about you know, where the plant occurs, what elevation the plant occurs at, and all of that information is specific to Mono County. So I've gone through tons and tons of records to figure out, you know, what elevation does this little golden violet occur at? And then many of the species are going to be illustrated with photographs. And so,
Sorry,
boy, so that's an
oh,
example.
there's still more.
That-
Alright.
What?
Well, here, how about I just enlarge the image? You
Yeah,
guys,
no, it's fine. It's just meant to be an example. Boy, I can't wait to see what the next one looks like.
are we ready for the next one?
Yeah. Yeah. So can you like highlight all of that?
I can highlight one half at a time.
Oh, okay. Well, it doesn't really matter. It's my only data slide in the whole thing. And I just wanted to show you the number of families, 115 genera. And really, maybe the important thing is how many species, 1,818. When I first started this project about 11 years ago, I did just a rough count of what was there from specimens that I could get access to online. And it was about 1,640. So that's how many species have been added as a result of new records coming online, things that I have found, things that my friends have found. So, you know, quite an increase. And the largest genus, if you know what sedges are, sedges have edges. Yeah. So carex, 66 species of carex. And right behind it are the buckwheats, Eriogonum with 60 species. Okay, next. Okay, maybe these will be better. I don't know. So this is the start of our field trip. We're going to the volcanic tablelands, that extensive area plateau of Bishop Tuff is the name of the substrate. Oh, could you go back?
Oh, yes, I can. Oh my goodness.
Ooh, okay. So this is just a view slide, but it does show you the beautiful monopentstemon, Penstemon monoensis, actually a fairly rare plant itself. Shining blazing star, indigo bush, a little tiny bit of fish slough, if you've ever heard of that location. And this is the Sierra in the background. So you're looking to the west across the volcanic tableland. Okay, next.
What time of year is this? Do you remember approximately?
Oh, yeah.
The time
So
of
the
year?
volcanic tableland is a relatively low part of Mono County. So if you were out there right now, you could find things that were flowering. So it's basically an April, May, you know, flowering time. Yeah, that's another great thing about Mono County. You know, you start down at 4,500 feet, and as the year goes by, you just move higher and higher, and there's always something to look at. So there can be tremendous displays of flowers in Mono County, but remember, it's a desert. So if you've been to Death Valley when it's, you know, one of those years, it's not always like that. But when it is, this is what it can look like. So this is an annual species, shining blazing star, that there was a little bit of in the last slide. And this is what it looks like if the sheep have not come through. They still run sheep in the Eastern Sierra. They're pretty much constantly on the move, but as they go through some of these landscapes, they really do a number on them, you know, especially the flowers. So this happened to be a very lucky year. And oh, this is where we're going next. That's the White Mountains in the background. Okay, next. So just an assortment of the things that you can see on the volcanic tableland. This is a tiny, about a half an inch tall little plant that used to be in the lily family until they split the lily family up into about 10 families. Now it's in the Femidaceae. Crowned Muilla. You probably all know the beaver tail, but you might not have known that it's in Mono County. It's pretty common at the lower elevations. And two of 25 or 26 different taxa of lupins that we have. Mojave lupin, so that's these two right here. And then short-stemmed lupin, these two right here. Okay. Good, we're looking a little bit better here.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Okay, so sand blossoms, Lynanthus perrii. So this is a very unusual species because it can occur in two color morphs. So it's the same species. It's not a subspecies or anything. There's purple and there's white. And this is, sometimes you see a mixed population like that. Sometimes you see a population that's almost or all white or almost or all purple. And there's complicated genetics that keep these two flower colors, going on, because one of the flower colors has an advantage under certain circumstances of, heat and moisture and so on, and the other one has an advantage under other circumstances, but you do get these mixed populations as well. So Lynanthus perrii in the phlox family, Polemoniaceae. Okay, stone crop Phacelia. Can we highlight some of this?
See, now that we have it big, I can't highlight it anymore.
It's going up.
Yeah, but yeah.
Well, anyway, it's a Phacelia, and we just call Phacelias Phacelia, right? And the interesting thing about this plant is I noticed, some years ago that there were only like 4 collections of this from Mono County, and there were only 4 collections from Inyo County, and yet it wasn't on the CNPS list. And I thought, well, gee, I wonder how rare it really is. So I actually organized a Bristlecone Chapter CNPS field trip to go out and scour the volcanic tableland and see how much of this we could find. And we actually found, a number of populations, but 2 young ladies, botanists who work in the Eastern Sierra in 2023, Maria Jesus and Perry Lee Pipkin, they decided that probably this deserved to be CNPS listed. So you petition to do that. You send in all the information that you have, and then a group of people at the state CNPS level decide. And they did decide, and now it is, well, somewhere it should be there. I think it got cut off. But it is CRPR listed. So that means California Rare Plant Rank. It used to be CNPS listed, but we changed that. Very tiny little plant, and you really only see this in wet years. So that, of course, always contributes to how well you understand what the distribution and abundance of a species is. If it's only there when it's a wet year, you might think that it's incredibly rare because you can't find it anyplace. And then you go out in a wet year and, that's the time to really look for it. Okay. White mountains. Okay. Oh, no, go back, please. I'm sorry. Okay. So these are the White Mountains, a portion of them. And just to give you some perspective, this is that pinky tan Bishop Tuff of the volcanic tableland. So now we're looking towards the east to the White Mountains. This is White Mountain Peak. And according to what I've read, the White Mountains are named for White Mountain Peak. And then the question would be, well, how did White Mountain Peak get its name? And you read different things online. One is that White Mountain Peak, which is only 250 feet lower than Mount Whitney. But has anybody ever heard of it? Yeah, some people have. Yes, some people have. Anyway, it's almost always got some snow on top of it. So that's one idea. White Mountain Peak is white at the top. But the other thing that I have read online is that a lot of the top of White Mountain, maybe not all of it, but there's definitely some of a geologic formation called the Reed Dolomite. And we'll see some more of that with the bristlecone pines in just a minute. But that is a very white substrate. It's a metamorphosed limestone. And there's a lot of it up there, but there's a lot of that, you know, throughout the White Mountain range. So anyway, the White Mountains. I personally like the snow idea myself. So, okay. So here we are. I just decided we would just go right up high. We're at about 10,500 feet or so. And what we have at that elevation in the White Mountains, everybody knows about the bristlecones, but one name for this plant community is Great Basin subalpine forest, because there aren't just bristlecones up there. There are also limber pines. The bristlecones tend to be, but they're not always, on the Reed Dolomite and, you know, some other formations. And the limber pines tend to be more on sandstone, but that's not 100% thing. Now, based on what you know, say, about the Sierra, you've got subalpine forest. Then right below that, if you were in the Sierra, say if you were at 9,000 feet, you know, really on either side of the Sierra, what would you have here? You'd have another forest. You'd have montane forest, right? It's montane forest, subalpine forest, and then the alpine, where you don't have any trees at all. Well, that vegetation type, because of the dryness of the White Mountains, it's in the rain shadow of the Sierra, is completely missing. There really is no community of montane forest. There are some isolated stands of lodgepoles, for example, but nothing that you would really call a forest. So what you have is a high elevation sagebrush community. So if you're going up the slopes of the White Mountains, you have sagebrush down, you know, sort of below. Then you've got a band of pinyon juniper woodland. Then instead of montane forest, you've got another band of sagebrush. You've got high altitude sagebrush before you get to this Great Basin subalpine forest. Okay. Okay, so here's me with a baby bristlecone, and bristlecone pines grow very slowly. I imagine, you know, most people know this. They put on a tiny, tiny amount of wood every year. They are reproducing, you know, it's a healthy population up there in the White Mountains. But a tree of this size could easily be 100 years old. Of course, I don't really know exactly how old it is, but it could be 100 years old. Okay, next. So as they get older, this is what they tend to look like. You still have multiple trunks. So this tree, I'm completely guessing here, but it could be 1,000 years old. It could be 1,500 years old. The needles on bristlecone pine, I remember when I used to take students who were about 20 years old, 19 years old, 18 years old, on field trips up to the White Mountains when I was teaching years ago. I would show them a bristlecone pine needle, and you can count back from the bud scale scars, and you can count back 20 years and find needles that are still on the branch that are 20 years old. And I point to a needle and I would say, that needle is older than you are. Anyway, old. Then they get older, they tend to lose bark, they tend to lose branches, and many of the oldest trees have only just a strand of bark that is left and a few branches. I was telling people at dinner that maybe there are more, but there are at least 3 individual bristlecone pines that have their own names in the White Mountains. One is the alpha tree. That is the first tree that was discovered to be more than 4,000 years old. So the oldest bristlecone pines that are living right now are in the White Mountains. There are other populations, but these are the oldest ones, I should say, that we know about. Anyway, Pine Alpha used to have a sign on it, this is Pine Alpha. You could walk right up to it. But then people decided that they needed like a souvenir from Pine Alpha. So they took the sign away. It's, completely, I suppose you might be able to find out where it is, but and then there's Methuselah, which probably looks somewhat more like this tree. Methuselah is the oldest tree in the White Mountains now that we know of. So, and it's close to 5,000 years old. How did they determine the age of these trees? They do a process called increment boring, which literally takes a little tiny bit of the wood, out of the trunk. And of course, they have to find a place where the trunk is, shows all of the years that the pine has been alive. And then they count the rings. And if you go up to the White Mountains, up to the Shulman Grove, up to the visitor center, you can see one of these sections, the way they like to do with redwoods and so on, where they've sanded it down, and you can sit there, peering at these tiny little lines and read how many years you've got on a particular bristlecone. So you might be asking, you're up there in this, very barren, very harsh, not very much moisture. Are there any flowers up there? Next slide. Yes, there are flowers. So on some of the more nutrient rich, I guess you would say, substrates, I think this is Campedo sandstone, but I'm not totally sure. But anyway, here's a bunch of botanists wandering about. And yes, you've got paintbrushes, you've got a number of things in the sunflower family. You've got, that's probably a lupin right there. So yeah, July would be the time to go if you want to see wildflowers up at this is about 10,500 feet, something like that. So not too harsh of an environment here. This is a stand of bristlecones on that reed dolomite. So you can see. Oh, thank you. Do I sound like I need it?
Well,
Okay.
maybe.
Well, there's more to come, so maybe I will need it. Okay, so next. So this is just just an assortment of the things that you can find up there. Well, I'm not talking into this, am I? Moorfield cinquefoil, so this would be Potentilla moorfieldii, Brewer's lupin, Lupinus breweri. This is White Mountains buckwheat, so that's Eriogonum gracilis, and Cooper's gold flower, Hymenopsis cooperi. So just, many other ones, but there's some. Now, if you go even higher, where it gets even more steep and even more rocky and even more intense, there's a whole different set of plants that you find that are really the alpine, really the true mountaineers that get up there as high. There are plants that have been collected on top of White Mountain Peak, on top. So that's 14,250 feet, and there are plants growing up there. So one of those might be White Mountain Sky Pilot. This is a different species than the Sky Pilot that we have in the Sierra. That one, Polemonium eximium, that's a Sierra endemic. And this one is found, I'm pretty sure, in the White Mountains and also in the Sweetwater Mountains. This little paintbrush that's about 2 inches tall, Castanea nana, and Cushion Townsendia, that's Townsendia condensata. These are all just little tiny belly flowers, and there are a whole bunch more that are found, on these fairly rugged slopes. Okay, so now we've come all the way over the White Mountains and down into that valley that I showed you on the east side that, very few people have been to. And okay, this is what it looks like. It's desert. This is a community that those of us in the know just call mixed desert scrub. It doesn't have creosote bush. So if you're used to the Mojave Desert and seeing stands of creosote, you don't have that here. creosote bush, probably because of the winter temperatures and so on, just does not get this far north. But there are something like 25 different shrubs. Might look all the same, but it's not. 25 different of these desert shrubs in various families, the mint family, the sunflower family, the pea family. And they're not really in flower here. And even when they are in flower, they don't look really that spectacular. But in addition to these shrubs, if you go out and wander among them, there's pretty things to see. This globe spring parsley, Cymopteros globosus, you can see here that the stem is completely buried. I mean, that's a characteristic of the plant. It's protected. The stem is you have to dig down about 4 inches to get the top of the stem, and that's where the petioles of the leaf come from, and that's where the peduncle of the flower stalk comes from. Another common name of these is wavy wing. This is actually in fruit, and every individual fruit, it's in the carrot family, if I didn't say that, every individual fruit has 2 wings on the side of it, and they're wavy on the edge. Can't quite see that in this view, but wavy wings, as well as spring parsleys. This cactus, yeah, this is a hard one to find. So this is definitely one of the tiniest cacti in California. It's about that tall and about that wide. And, difficult for me to understand. The individual plants are very widely spaced. So if you want to find this, you got to take an afternoon in early June, go out to Fish Lake Valley and just walk transects, back and forth, back and forth. I did that over about 2 acres a couple of years ago, and I found exactly 8 individuals. So it's a rare plant. I should have put the CRPR designation up here. Grusonia pulchella, its relatives farther south in the Mojave, some of them are called horse cripplers because they have these huge spines, these huge, wide, long spines, and they're prostrate, and you can figure it out. If you happen to be out there around dusk, these evening primroses, they really do open up. You can actually watch them open up. If you're out there, say 15, 20 minutes, half an hour before the sun goes down, they open up. The individual flowers are only open for 1 night, and they are pollinated, as you might imagine, by moths, hawk moths in particular, the great big sphinx moths, I guess we also call them. And then the next day, all these flowers will be closed, and you can see closed flowers, and then I'm sure that's a bud right there. The next day's flowers will open up. And amazingly, for the number of flowers that these plants have, they keep flowering for, quite a long period of time. You would think that it would be flash in the pan. And, with that many flowers open at once, they would be done pretty quickly, but that is not the case. Okay. One of the things that the Fish Lake Valley is known for, the portion of it that's in California, is that it is the northernmost location of Joshua tree in California. And of course, there's many, many Joshua trees farther south and in Southern California, down in the Mojave, but there are exactly 23 Joshua trees in Fish Lake Valley. I know that because I spent an entire day with this gentleman, Jim Moorfield, who is the world's expert on the White Mountains and is writing a flora of the White Mountains. He just retired from Nevada Conservation Department a couple years ago. And we located these with binoculars, and we walked to all of them. And Jim has made an iNaturalist project. If you use iNaturalist, you can make projects. So if you just Google Yucca brevifolia on iNaturalist in Mono County, you will probably come up with Jim's project, and you can see exactly. It's like, okay, here's one. Now let's walk all the way over here because there's another one over there. Uh-oh, do we need the internet?
It does that sometimes.
Anyway, I just also wanted to mention that in California, not federally, but in California, Joshua trees became a candidate for listing in 2020. And of course, this was a big hubbub in Southern California because of all the development that occurs, housing development in Joshua tree areas. So now we have a Western Joshua Tree Conservation Act. I don't know the current status of this, but the idea is to figure out a way that Joshua trees and development can continue to coexist. Okay, next. Okay, Mono Basin, that's what that says up there. So how many of you have been to Mono Lake? Okay, so you know where the Mono Basin is. I took this picture about 50 years ago. So the level of Mono Lake was a lot lower than it is now. It still hasn't reached that ecologically healthy level that we have been aiming for decades now. These are the Mono craters over here. So this is sort of looking south across Mono Lake. And yeah, there are a lot of plants around Mono Lake, but we're not going to go there today. We're going to go to the eastern Mono Basin, way, way out there, and visit these mounds of soil of a very interesting and unusual substrate type. This guy came along to see what I was doing as I was taking some photographs. A Western diamondback rattlesnake, in case some of you in the back can't see that, but he went his way, he or she went their way, and I went my way. Anyway, this substrate is very unusual. Next slide. And it has a number of interesting and rare plants that occur on it. Oh, you can read this down here. That's great. Hey, we've had some improvement here. So this soil is, and this is what, I'm not a geologist, but this is what the Yosemite geologist Greg Stock told me about this substrate and these chunks of gravel, is that this is hydrothermally altered gray clay, and it's overlain by these chunks that are called siliceous sinter, which we sometimes just call caliche. The interesting thing about this, according to what he told me, is that this forms underwater. So this is a substrate type that forms at hot springs that are underwater. Well, this area is anything but underwater right now. But in the distant past, Mono Lake was much, much, much higher than it has ever been in present time. So that entire Mono Basin that you saw on the first map, that was once a gigantic lake. And so that, that is when this substrate developed. And just one of our 60 eriogonums, Eriogonum rosense. Mount Rose is, you know, that's the mountain that's up near Reno. So it's a fairly okay. Next. So if you get out there to the eastern Mono Basin, you won't see these around Mono Lake, but these are some plants that you can find out there. This beautiful Asclepias. If you could read this, it says Humboldt Mountains milkweed. And this is yet another evening primrose, not the one that we saw out in Fish Lake Valley, but Enothera cespitosa. And another blazing star, not like the shiny blazing star, but this one actually has CRPR listing, a spiny little thing. Okay, next. So these are some of the more really unusual plants found out in that caliche area. Silver bladder wort something. I forget I often forget common names, just have to bear with me. But anyway, this occurs in just a couple of populations right there on the Nevada border, and it's in the mustard family, in the Brassicaceae. Spiny milk vetch, this is a little mat loco weed, would be a common name for it, along with milk vetch. Astragalus centrophyta variety ungulata, and both of these have CRPR designation. Yeah, my pal Steve Matson went out to this area with me because I'm not the photographer that he is, and took these photographs for me. Okay, so again, so here's something that I found. I
And
don't even
you might be
remember.
able to read
What was
off
that?
this a little better. If that's easy. It's cut off.
Yeah. Anyway, this is another plant I found out in that area. You can see the chunks of caliche here. This is a genus, Oxytropis, that is related to astragalus or loco weeds, which you might see by the flowers and the leaves, and then also these fruits. But it has been split from astragalus into a separate genus. This is the only known location in the entire state of California for this plant. So that's the sort of plant that, even though it's found in Nevada, California's view of these things is that we don't have control over anything that they do in Nevada. So we want to protect our own biodiversity. So something that's only known from one location in our state, we want to make sure that we take care of that. Okay. On to the Bodie Hills. So here I am standing up on top of Bodie Mountain, which is about 10,000 feet. Potato Peak would be over here. Looking to the east, to the Wasatch Range, which is in Nevada. Very dry mountain range of old volcanics, the whole thing, old volcanics. Beauty Peak and Boundary Peak and the Dry Lakes Plateau, although when I took this picture, the lakes were not dry. Those are the lakes right there. So it's just, a very hard area to get around in. My friend Tim Messick, who, we found a little lupin together. He and I taught a 4-day class out here for the Jepson Herbarium last year. It was a lot of fun. And we've spent a lot of time botanizing out in the Bodie Hills. This is his website blog, bodiehillsplants.com. He's got a lot of information there about the Bodie Hills if you're interested in going there. It's hard to get around on your own. The roads, except the road that goes to Bodie Town, all the roads are unpaved. It's easy to get lost. So being with the group, in a class was quite successful for everybody. Okay, so here's something that showed up. This was in flower on a field trip that I led. Oh my goodness, I don't know, in 2020 or something. And we didn't really know what it was, because this is all I came to learn. All of these paintbrush plants are all a member of the same species, the same variety of Castanea angustifolia. And I tried to key this out in the Jepson, but since this plant had never been identified in California before, it's not in the Jepson. And so you can't key out things like that. So I used another set of books, the Intermountain Flora, and it's like, oh, well, I think that's what this is. And so what did I do? I sent specimens off to an expert. The expert happens to be up at the University of Washington, and he said, yep, that's what you've got. And I thank Joanne Hine. She got up, she went on my field trip. She thought this was so beautiful. She wanted to come back and photograph it. And she and her friend got up at like 3 o'clock in the morning so that they could be there for sunrise to take this picture. Not something I would ever do. Anyway, thank you, Joanne. Oh, well, some of that is just missing. Oh, dear. Okay. Yeah, so we're missing some some photos here, but that's okay. Another buckwheat, a rare buckwheat, again, it's in the Bodie Hills. There's only one location in California. The interesting thing about this is that it had been found and collected in 1981 by Matt Lavin. And I was just curious, you know, like, is it still for the long term? So I convinced some friends of mine to, it's a very remote location, to go out there with me in their big four-wheel drive. And in fact, we did find it. And the picture that's missing, it just shows the habitat of this plant. So, okay. Okay, I guess we're just not going to have that one. Yeah. Okay, so another rare plant of the Bodie Hills, Lavin's milkvetch, another astragalus. And, you know, you might think that these pods would be very distinctive, but in fact, there are many species and varieties of loco weeds that have these inflated pods with the red markings. So you kind of have to put everything together to identify these things. This is the habitat. Those are the plants. So kind of a harsh, you know, unstable slopes with a lot of gravel. The white flowers, the leaves that only have a small number of leaflets and these pods and some of the details of the pods. That's how you identify these. Okay. Okay. So this is a plant. I will just tell you what's up there. This is a plant that was not known to be in California until I discovered 2 specimens in the Reno Herbarium that said they were from Mono County. You know, it's Eremothera, used to be Camisonia nevadensis. Now it's Eremothera nevadensis, and it was thought to be endemic to Nevada. But we have at least one population in California, in Mono County, in the Bodie Hills. Okay. So the last place we're going to visit, the Dana Plateau. Here we are down at Mono Lake. So you know where that is. We're at South Tufa, actually, looking up at the Sierra. And this landform right here, that is the Dana Plateau. So it's about 11,200 feet at that end and close to 13,000 feet at that end. And it's actually about 2 miles long. And you know, it's not flat, but it's, you know, kind of gently sloping over those 2 miles, let's say. Okay. Oh, we don't have the picture. Okay, well, at least you can see what it looks like from up there. So this is a spot on the east side of the Dana Plateau that's called Angel's Flight. So it's at about 11,500 feet. Here's Mono Lake down here. And this is the Tioga Road. So if you know, go to Yosemite, up Lundy Canyon, that would be the road that you would take. And that's actually, if you could see the other slides, that's the road that you drive up to get access to the Dana Plateau. You park a little bit below the Tioga kiosk, and then it's not that far of a hike. It's just, you know, it's pretty steep to get up there. And then I had some pretty pictures of the plants that you can see up there. But I guess we're not going to get those. We're going to, so this is the Sky Pilot from the Sierra. So at least you can see that. And this is just, so don't go any further. These are slides that are not included, but this one right here, that's my thank you slide. So there's a beautiful background picture, but I just like to thank, you know, everybody that has helped me with this project. Over the years, I add people every year, people who go out in the field with me, people who help me get my collecting permits so that I can collect legally, you know, people who give me advice about where I might find something interesting. They're all listed here. So, okay. Anybody have any questions? No. Okay, well, yes.
Are you familiar with the Hall Research Area?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That wasn't part of what you visited?
No.
Okay.
The Hall Research Area is near Saddlebag Lake.
Yeah.
So here's the Dana Plateau over here. Here's Saddlebag Lake over here. So they're both kind of in the greater Tioga Pass area. Yeah, and the whole natural area. I used to lead weekend workshops for the Mono Lake Committee and at high elevation. And that's one of the places where we spent a whole day, was walking back into the old buildings and then, further up the trail. There's a lot of beautiful flowers back in there. Yeah. Okay, how many people are going to go to Mono County this summer? Yes, good. Yes.
However do you keep up with the names?
Well, that's a good question. So the question was, how do I keep up with the name changes? Well, the Jepson Herbarium is doing a really wonderful thing, which is it's all online now. The whole Jepson manual is online. And so when they get a bunch of changes together, they have what they call a new revision. So just like 2 weeks ago, I spent an entire Saturday on Zoom watching the experts in this group and that group talk about, the new names and why the names have changed and what the names are now. And so that's how you do it. But it's a constant thing because things are changing constantly. And then of course there's the literature, there's articles. People, they publish an article on, this group of trifolium, and instead of 5 varieties, we've just crunched them all into the species. There's no varieties. And it's like, great. Okay. I can get rid of all those other things I wrote in my checklist.
And is
So
this based on DNA studies or is it actual physically looking?
both. I mean, there are people who still do morphometric studies, is what they call it, which is just measuring things and, looking at how they look and so on. And then there are people that rely very heavily on DNA. And then there are people who use both. And some of the changes, you as a botanist, like if you're writing a book like I am, I can pick and choose. I don't have to accept someone's idea if I don't agree with it. And I'm a field botanist, and so I tend to value morphological differences more than I do something that's just based on DNA. So you all know, I think, as what we used to call Zauchneria, the red flowers. Everybody's got those in their garden probably. Those are now epilobiums, but not in my book. No, not in my book. They're still Zauchneria. Yeah. Zauchneria caney. So, so that's how you do it. You can make your own decisions about what you accept and what you don't accept. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. I'm sorry about the problem, but thank you for doing what you did.